Today we'll be taking a look at the state capitals of America. We'll start with Pennsylvania state capital, since it's my home state. According to the narrative, this incredible building was built between 1902 and 1904, taking 4 years to construct. At the time, Harrisburg was a blossoming city of 51,000 to 72,000 people, despite the Philippine-American War going on at the time. No less than $13 million was spent on construction. As for the New York state capitol, it was built between 1876 and 1899, taking 32 years, though the population of Albany was a full 100,000. The Spanish-American War and the American Indian Wars went on at that time. $25 million was spent on construction. Now I'm going to shorten the rest of the construction narratives so this doesn't take all day. Delaware, constructed 1931 to 1933, taking 2 years. City population, 42,281. Concurrent wars, none. $122 million spent on construction. Connecticut, constructed 1871 to 1878, taking 7 years. City population, 40,000. Concurrent wars, Modoc War, Apache Wars, $2,532,524.43 spent on construction. Massachusetts, constructed 1795 to 1798, taking 3 years. City population, roughly 22,000. Concurrent wars, American-Algerian War, Quasi-War. $133,333.33 spent on construction. New Jersey, constructed 1885, taking 1 year. City population, 500 to 600 people. Concurrent wars, Northwest Indian Wars. $9 million spent on construction. Vermont, constructed 1857 to 1859, taking 2 years. City population, 1,200. Concurrent wars, Bleeding Kansas, Utah War. $150,000 spent on construction. New Hampshire, constructed 1816 to 1819, taking 3 years. City population, 1,500. Concurrent wars, First Seminole War. $82,000 spent on construction. Maine, constructed 1829 to 1832, taking 3 years. City population, a few thousand. Concurrent wars, Black Hawk War, Bank War. $145,000 spent on construction. Maryland, constructed 1772 to 1779, taking 7 years. City population, 150,000. Concurrent wars, American Revolution. $2,400,000 spent on construction. Virginia, constructed 1785 to 1788, taking 3 years. City population, below 200. Concurrent wars, Northwest Indian Wars, part of the American Indian Wars, American-Algerian War. $104 million spent on construction. West Virginia, constructed 1924 to 1932, taking 8 years. City population, 114,109,000. Concurrent wars, none. $9,491,180.03 spent on construction. North Carolina, constructed 1833 to 1840, taking 7 years. City population, 13,991. Concurrent wars, none. $532,682 spent on construction. South Carolina, constructed 1855 to 1907, taking 52 years. City population, 6,000 to 25,000. Concurrent wars, American Civil War, Indian Wars, Spanish-American War, War of 1907. $3,940,000 spent on construction. Georgia, constructed 1884 to 1889, taking 4.5 years. City population, 50,000. Concurrent wars, Apache Wars. $1 million spent on construction. Florida, constructed 1826 to 1845, taking 19 years. City population, 103,047 to 81,584. Concurrent wars, Seminole Wars. $50,000 spent on construction. Alabama, constructed 1850 to 1851, taking 1 year. City population, 11,937. Concurrent wars, Cayuse War, Mariposa War, Ute Wars, Chickarilla War. $400 million spent on construction. Tennessee, constructed 1845 to 1859, taking 14 years. City population, 8,000. Concurrent wars, Bleeding Kansas, Pig War, Mexican-American War. $900,000 spent on construction. Ohio, constructed 1839 to 1861, taking 22 years. City population, 18,000. Concurrent wars, Bleeding Kansas, Pig War, Mexican-American War. $1,300,000 spent on construction. Kentucky, constructed 1904 to 1910, taking 6 years. City population, 10,000. Concurrent wars, none. $1,180,434.80 spent on construction. Michigan, constructed 1872 to 1878, taking 6 years. City population, likely in the thousands. Concurrent wars, Modoc War, the Great Sioux War. $1,427,738.78 spent on construction. Louisiana, constructed 1930 to 1932, taking 14 months. City population, 68,208. Concurrent wars, none. $5 million spent on construction. Missouri, constructed 1913 to 1917, taking 4 years. City population, 14,500. Concurrent wars, World War I. $4,210,000 spent on construction. Illinois, constructed 1868 to 1888, taking 20 years. City population, 17,000 to 20,000. Concurrent wars, Red Cloud's War, Nez Perce War. $4,500,000 spent on construction. Iowa, constructed 1871 to 1886, taking 15 years. City population, 20,000. Concurrent wars, Apache Wars. $2,900,000 spent on construction. Indiana, constructed 1878 to 1888, taking 10 years. City population, 75,056. Concurrent wars, none. $2 million spent on construction. Mississippi, constructed 1901 to 1903, taking 28 months. 2 years, 4 months. City population, 7,816. Concurrent wars, Moro Wars, Panamanian Revolution. $1,093,641 spent on construction. Wisconsin, constructed 1906 to 1917, taking 11 years. City population, 27,000 to 42,000. Concurrent wars, World War I. $7,200,000 spent on construction. Arkansas, constructed 1899 to 1950, taking 16 years. City population, 38,307. Concurrent wars, World War I. $2,300,000 spent on construction. Minnesota, constructed 1895 to 1905, taking 9 years. City population, 140,291. Concurrent wars, Spanish-American War. $4,500,000 spent on construction. Texas, constructed 1882 to 1888, taking 6 years. City population, 12,500. Concurrent wars, none. $3,700,000 spent on construction. Oklahoma, constructed 1914 to 1917, taking 2.5 years. City population, 12,000. Concurrent wars, World War I. $1,500,000 spent on construction. Kansas, constructed 1866 to 1903, taking 37 years. City population, 3,500 to 50,000. Concurrent wars, American Indian Wars, Spanish-American War, Philippine-American War. $3,200,588.92 spent on construction. Nebraska, constructed 1922 to 1932, taking 10 years. City population, 160,000 to 200,000. Concurrent wars, none. $9,800,000 spent on construction. South Dakota, constructed 1905 to 1910, taking 5 years. City population, 400 to 600. Concurrent wars, none. $1 million spent on construction. North Dakota, constructed 1931 to 1934, taking 3 years. City population, 16,099. Concurrent wars, none. $1,900,000 spent on construction. Montana, constructed 1899 to 1902, taking 3 years. City population, 10,770. Concurrent wars, Spanish-American War, Philippine-American War. $540,000 spent on construction. Wyoming, constructed 1886 to 1917, taking 31 years. City population, 10,000 to 15,000. Concurrent wars, Spanish-American War, Philippine-American War, World War I. $150,000 spent on construction. New Mexico, constructed 1964 to 1966, taking 2 years. City population, 60,000. Concurrent wars, Vietnam War. $4,676,860 spent on construction. Idaho, constructed 1905 to 1920, taking 15 years. City population, 21,393. Concurrent wars, World War I. $2,100,000 spent on construction. Utah, constructed 1912 to 1916, taking 4 years. City population, 140,000. Concurrent wars, World War I, $2,700,000 spent on construction. Arizona, constructed 1899 to 1901, taking 3 years. City population, 5,514. Concurrent wars, Philippine-American War. $135,744 spent on construction. Washington State, constructed 1922 to 1928, taking 6 years. City population, 25,000. Concurrent wars, none. $7,400,000 spent on construction. Oregon, constructed 1936 to 1938, taking 2 years. City population, 20,000. Concurrent wars, none. $2,500,000 spent on construction. Nevada, constructed 1870 to 1871, taking 1 year. City population, 2,641. Concurrent wars, Reconstruction in the South. $170,000 spent on construction. California, constructed 1860 to 1874, taking 14 years. City population, 25,000. Concurrent wars, American Civil War, American Indian Wars. $11,500,000 spent on construction. Hawaii, constructed 1965 to 1969, taking 4 years. City population, 26 million. Concurrent wars, Vietnam War. $25 million spent on construction. Alaska, constructed 1929 to 1931, taking 2 years. City population, in the low thousands. Concurrent wars, Mexican Cristero War. $1 million spent on construction. Washington, D.C., constructed 1793 to 1826, taking 33 years. City population, 7,000 to 13,000. Concurrent wars, War of 1812, Anglo-Burmese War. $133 million spent on construction. Now that we're done with that monotony of names, dates, and numbers, let's consider some problems. I think there are some clear problems. I would like to start by taking a look at the more impossible instances. First, we'll take a look at Virginia. The Virginia state capitol was built between 1785 and 1788, taking merely 3 years, and from the less than 200 people living in Richmond at the time, likely less than 60 would be men able to be spared to work on it. At the time, the Northwest Indian War, the American Indian Wars, and the American-Algerian War going on. So you're going to tell me, 100 years before the first power tool was invented, they were building this, having to ship in nearly all the workers they needed, while at the same time there were 3 wars raging on. And they managed all this in 3 years. I'd say ludicrous, but I'll leave you to draw your own conclusions. Next, let's look at the Alabama state capitol. At the time of construction, there were 11,937 people in Montgomery. The Cayuse War, Mariposa War, Ute War, and Jicarilla War were all going on at that same time. It was nearly 50 years before the invention of the power tool. But the most incredible part is none of that. The most incredible part is that it was built in 1 year, 1850 to 1851. 1 year! This is far from the most impressive state capital, but it is also far from the least. How in the world do you build this in 1 year? New Jersey is similar, and probably more incredible. Built in 1 year, 1885, there was the Northwest Indian War going on at the time, but the population of Trenton was a mere 500 to 600 people. Also, at the time this was being built, 9 other state capitals were under construction. 9! Well, I'll let you just look at this work of art for a bit. Could they really have done this in 1 year? Impossible. Here I would like to pause and note that 16 state capitals, 32% of all state capitals, were built in less than 4 years, and only 9, 18%, took longer to build than 15 years. The majority of the remaining 50% fall into the single-digit range. I would consider New Jersey the nail in the coffin to get you questioning, but I'll do one more. This is the Oklahoma State Capitol building. Built between 1914 and 1917, it took 2 years and 6 months to complete. Note that it is entirely during World War I. The population of Oklahoma City was 12,000. Besides the fact that it only took them 2.5 years, how could they have completed it so quickly while funding the Allied forces and then joining them? How could they have managed it with only $1.5 million to spend? I'll let you stare in awe at the glory of this building and then let you draw your own conclusions. Oh, and note what you see here on the wall. Just for the sake of fairness, I'll go over the believable construction stories. South Carolina, mostly believable due to it taking 52 years to build. Note that I'm not saying this is true, but I'm saying that it could be. New Mexico was built in 1964 to 1966, and it doesn't look particularly impressive, as you can see. The Hawaii Capitol building was built 1965 to 1969, and it looks like a fancy hut. Like usual, the alternative is not going to be long. I would say these buildings, with the exception of the New Mexico and Hawaii capitals, are the leftovers of an ancient advanced civilization, possibly from the 1,000-year reign of Christ. I believe it would have been extremely difficult for people of the late 18th, 19th, and early 20th centuries to build structures like these at all, let alone in 2 or 3 years. I encourage you not to take my words without research of your own, and I also encourage you to dig deeper into this topic as I have only scratched the surface.